Hello, my fellow car modelers. How are you doing today? Today is Primer the Body Day. So, other thing I was working on over at BG's the other night with the little build session is I was working on sanding off all these little parting lines that were everywhere. They were kind of like, you know, in strange spots, but there weren't a lot and they were very faint, but they were in really weird spots. But they did a real good job of not having a lot of these parting lines. And they were like right there. And we had a really crazy one on the trunk lid. And it looks like I got everything gone. I also, you know, because all the emblems, there was a cutlass here. I didn't get a picture of that, and I didn't get a picture of the 442. But there's decals in the kit to replace those. They were so freaking faint that they were going to get just buried in the paint. And this right here, here's another little problem I have with this so-called retooled body. How faint this chrome piece is. I really don't want to lose that chrome piece. I want to put that there. So I'm really hoping that I don't lose that in the paint. I'm planning on doing the color on this, airbrushing it and keeping it as thin as possible and trying to keep the primer down as much as I can. Hopefully, and you never can tell till you get the primer on there. You think you got everything, all the lines sanded off and everything, and you end up, well, you know, it shows up again. So there's a whole lot of primering, sanding. You also get your ghosting from the emblems you take off. The best way to get rid of that, the only way to get rid of that is you got a primer, and then you got a sand, and then you got a primer, and then you got a sand. You should do a couple of prime and sand sessions. Now, the only primer I have right now is the Duplicolor, out of the can Duplicolor scratch filler primer. It's a pretty thick one, and I'm kind of thinking, man, I don't know if I want to use that thick of a primer because I don't want to lose like that detail, but it really does the job. So I'm going to go out to the garage and shoot that. It's just I'm doing it with a spray can. And one thing I want to cover about the primer that I use, and I've said this before, it is a lacquer base. I highly recommend any lacquers you use lacquer base. It doesn't matter what you paint. The lacquer base, they dry quick. You can get to sanding pretty quick, and it's just the best way to go with primer. So that's what I'm going to be using. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to prime this, and I'll show you before I start wet sanding. Alrighty. So here we go for a station identification. I don't even know what that means. You're watching the Luka Cee channel on YouTube. Okay, we are back from setting the primer on here. I did 2 coats of primer. It's still wet. You want to let it set about 30 minutes before you do anything. So we're going to do that before I start wet sanding. But what's nice, when it's still kind of got a wetness to it, all the sins come and show themselves. And you can really tell if you have all your parting lines taken out and other things. And it looks like I got stuff gone pretty good. It doesn't look like I have any ghosting of the emblems, and that's pretty pleasing. I was really concerned about this line that was on the back here and the emblem that was right there, a little 442 emblem. Seemed to get them all gone. I don't really want to take this body off of here. You can see there's some boogers there that got to get sanded off. But it looks like everything's good, but a few things pop up. And I didn't lose that chrome. I might be able to save that chrome, like I said, if I do thin base coat, because I like to do my chroming. I'll use probably bare metal foil. I do that before I clear. I clear over my bare metal foil. So I might be good like that. So, we don't seem to have too many problems. But one thing we have, which I suspected, and I got to make a decision here. You can see really good in the light right there. You see there? And over on this side here, we've got those dimples because of that stuff there. You don't see the ones up here too bad. for the alignment pins for the interior, but definitely for these jobs right there. And there is a little bit of ghosting right there from, if you see in there, those alignment things are absolutely, by the way, absolutely useless, because the the firewall doesn't even make it to each side of the body, so those are really useless. But it leaves a bit of a dimple there. This is where I have to make a decision. I could start doing body work. Maybe I'll smear a little bit of some red putty on there, the glazing putty. But if I'm under a time constraint is the problem. I have a week. Well, by the time you watch this, 1 day less than a week to have this model done. If I don't get this model done by the time the model meeting comes, well, the problem that we have, friends, is that I have to put it off the side because I got to get on that 40 Ford build. So that will slow this down. But once I'm done with the 40 Ford, if we get to that, I promise you, I'm going to come back to the progression of this Oldsmobile build. I'm going to get right back on it after the 40 Ford. So I got a little bit of weirdness going right there in the primer. That'll all sand out. That's 2 coats of primer. I'm going to wet sand this probably in about a half hour or so. I want to let this really set up real nice. And you know what? Since I'm going to be wet sanding, I don't know why I'm insisting upon keeping them on the things that I use, because I just use like an old thin, what is that? Heat shields. I don't even know what that was, but I like the size and the shape of the spray can, and I put tape on there, and that's what I use to hold my bodies when I'm spray painting or painting or whatever. Let's get the tape out from under there. What I'm gonna do afterwards, as you see, I already kind of, but good thing, I hate that. It's still, you can't really touch it well, but, and I still touch. So, all pretty nice body. The body really handled it well. I can see that chrome strip a little better with the primer on there. It doesn't look so away. I think I believe I put tape over here so I wouldn't sand over it. So I don't know if I sand over it when I was sanding the 442 off of there. But, yeah, who knows? Oh, I'm hitting things. Yeah, it's a little more pronounced right there. But anyway, we'll get her done. So I'm going to let this sit, and I'm going to wet sand that. And that'll be our first thing. So I'm probably going to wet sand it. Oh, look right there. I can already see. Bing. One of them things showed their nasty head. You see that? Right there, there's a parting line. So I got to get rid of that parting line. I don't like it. I didn't get it all. It's like right there. See that? Right there. I'll work on that. But there's a couple of imperfections on this body. I see a little divot right there, a little sink mark. I just, we got to see what's more important. Do we want to keep this on the schedule? I could keep doing body work. I'll try to do a little bit. Primer sand sessions, that should get us really in good shape. I think we can make this look really nice. I really need to have this. This is for me it's Saturday, it's Sunday for you guys. But I really need to get this thing tonight ready for paint. So maybe I could possibly paint it tomorrow. If I don't get at least the color on here, I don't know. I don't know how my week's gonna go, if I'm gonna be able to make it to the model meeting. This model is going to the model meeting, because wherever I'm at with it, I'm putting it together, and it's going to be on the table at the model meeting. It might not be finished. But then we'll have to move on to the 40 Ford. So I'll be right back. We're going to take another station break, and when we come back, this will be all wet sanded. And welcome back. Well, I went ahead and did my wet sanding, and you can see on these a little bit harder parts where we went back to the white plastic. That's where I still had a line there. I still see a little bit of a line there. I still got to work on that. Having a hard time getting that one out, but I got that one out pretty good. Don't see it. And there was another line here. I had to sand a little bit harder, and I kind of noticed that's a nice thing after you primer a model, you can see kind of where you didn't get too well. So I went ahead and hit a lot of edges that were still kind of really harsh. They need to be chilled out a bit. So that the hood looks good. Everything looks real good. And what I did is I, went over to my sink and I brought what I use is these sanding pads. I get them from I've had a ton of them. I bought them at the automotive paint supply store from Norton, and I've also gotten them from 3M, and they're all pretty much the same. If you go to a hobby shop or you order online, it's the same stuff that you get, the Tamiya stuff. So it doesn't matter, it's all the same. But as you see, I've always toted this. These are the only ones I ever use, is the 1000 to 800. And what they are, they're kind of like 800 grit if you do them dry. They chill out a bit when you're wet sanding. It's more like 1000 grit. So that's what I use. It's all I sand my primer with. I don't go any finer. I don't try to do too heavy. If you start to go real fine, you start to buff and you get your primer very, very smooth, well then you don't have anything for your paint to bite. And that is a big problem. Do you ever paint, and like sometimes people, because of scratches and stuff, they're not getting they're still seeing scratches through their paint. So their way of fixing it, and I'm getting into the paint subject here, which sometimes I don't like to touch because there's so many opinions. And I'm just going to say that right now. There's so many opinions and so many people that want to tell me I'm wrong or tell you you're wrong. But I'm just telling you from a perspective of a pretty outstanding painter at one time who used to get on the cover of magazines and stuff with real cars. So I think he knew what he was talking about. But anyways, I digress, as BG says. You gotta sand your primer. If you leave it alone, first it's too rough, or if you go too buffed out, your paint won't grab, or or you'll have too many imperfections. Or sometimes when you have those scratches that show through your paint, so you figure I'm just gonna paint, or I'm just gonna primer with the finest primer I can find, and then I just shoot my paint over it. You're kind of defeating the purpose of primer at that point, because you have to do primering, sanding to get everything perfect and smooth. It's the only way to do it. Lots of times you've only primered once and sanded once, you're going to see scratches through your paint. It's that constant primering and sanding 2 or 3 sessions that gets everything really smoothed and perfect, and there's really no need to go any lighter than these pads right here. You go any lighter than that, you're going to have that problem of your paint not adhering. Now, how many people out there have gone, this paint is no good, what is wrong with this stuff? Because it just, when I pull my tape, it peels off. That is why. It's because you're not creating a surface for that paint to grab into. Paint needs to link with other paint or other surfaces. It's the only way it works, or it's going to flake right off. So that is how we do it here at the Luka Cee headquarters here, shop, whatever this is. Just letting you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I think I'm going to do a prime and a sand session, and maybe a third prime and sand session on this car. Make sure it's all good, because I still, I worked really hard. You can kind of see where I'm starting to come through, because I sanded really hard on the areas that I took off emblems. And again, I had some lines here I need to get rid of more. I still got a little touch-up sanding I got to do on this, and then I'm going to go shoot some more primer on it. Then I'm going to sand it, and I'll probably shoot and sand more. Like I said, 3 sessions will be really good, and that's when we're going to come back. I'm going to leave this video at this and just, let you know, and then we're going to get into the painting of this thing. And I have decided, because I still was out searching, and I just couldn't find, unless I went to the automotive place and had some real automotive paint mixed. I really don't want to do that. I am going to shoot, and I know there's been a few out there that have said, "Ew, this is craft paint," and usually I'm one not to venture into other paints that are designed for something else. But sometimes, especially with, I don't know what clear yet I'm going to do, but more than likely if I shoot 2K on this, the beautiful thing about 2K clear is you can paint anything. And the proof is, you see this beautiful model right here? This was painted by a guy who I've talked about many times. His name was Frank Bennett. He's my good friend that passed away, but he was an award-winning automotive hot rod painter. And you see that black there? That black was the cheapest Kmart flat black in a rattle can. But he 2K cleared over it. You can clear over anything, provided you get this laid down nice. You're going to get a good clear coat on it. It don't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I could just clear this primer and it would turn out beautiful. So it would be a beautiful gray. So that's all I got to say about this episode. Again, when we come back, we'll see how much farther I am. I'm going to touch a couple more things before we go. Sorry, hey, that's how it works when we're on the fly here. But what we got here is, I think I'm changing my mind about this. I was looking at pictures of the actual cars, and this doesn't really replicate the center support very well, as far as plus this thing right here goes up too high, holds the hood up. And I'm going to figure something out. I'm going to either look through maybe some old bodies or something that I could cut core supports off, or find something, or scratch build something. But I also have the ideas. I think I'm going to take my little Dremel, probably this job right here, and I'm going to go in there, and I think I'm going to, because the screw comes up to about here, so all this top portion you don't really need. So I think I'm going to kind of sand it at an angle, kind of knife edge them, if you will, and kind of take it off at an angle here, where it's not so noticeable up here, and it's so pronounced and round and And I'm really going to try to make a nice core support. I really, really think that you do nice core support detail, that'll really, really help this engine bay out a lot. And again, this is with, you're pretty much using all the stuff from the parts box, from the box itself. A few things from parts box to enhance, but I'm not doing kit bashing with this. I don't want to get into severe kit bashing. I want to use what this kit is and create a really nice model with it. So there, now we're done. Now I'm going to move on to the next step. And I hope you guys had a great weekend. And I don't know if this is out in time for Sunday, because I kind of was delaying. Right now, this is Sunday. I have till next Saturday to have this done. I hope I can do it. I'm kind of, yeah. But, yeah, so by the time you're watching this is either a few hours later or possibly Monday. I'll let you know how it goes. I also got to do some Christmas shopping. Oh. So have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we will see you again on this channel. Keep gluing those fingers together and keep building model cars. Why? Because they're fun. Wow, I mixed that one all up. Do you see what I did there? It was cool. Here's the producers. Already to... Hello...